They were gifted apparently to the Queen, working on something, and we wondered if we could ask for your help. And they're from King Charles's flock. King Charles is the patron of the Pigeon Racing Association in Great Britain, and PETA are asking him to question that and step away from it, because the RSPCA will, pardon the pun, swoop in and shit all over the place. They'll go to a chicken farm down the road and be like, 10,000 birds in a tiny shed with no ventilation. Yeah, that's fine. Because they feel that by having such a high-profile figure, it's endorsing it. I mean, he literally endorse it, doesn't he? And he has his own flock in Sandringham, which are bought and sold for money. Don't know where the money goes. The whole thing about pigeons being dirty absolutely grinds my gears. It pisses me off more than anything. I have worked with birds for 15 years, and I've worked in veterinary practice since the 90s. I know that's a bit harsh, but I'm a harsh person, and I just think take some responsibility for your actions.
Welcome back to the Plant Field Podcast with me, your host and vegan nutritionist, Callum Weir. We're welcoming back another guest this week who only appeared a handful of shows ago on episode 19, Susan Joyce, who turned out to be unsurprisingly a favourite for a lot of the listeners, with her down-to-earth and unapologetic self, humour and pigeon talk. But why is she back so soon? Well, last time we heard about the past stories of the Daily Mail and the Sun, however now involved in a bigger story alongside PETA in regards to no other than the King of England himself, King Charles. Sue now has 3 of many of the King's racing pigeons in her sanctuary after being thrown into an auction. We discuss all things pigeon, how pigeon racing is a blood sport, how there's new generations getting into this so-called sport, how pigeons have become a nuisance to the public, however we as humans have created this issue ourselves, and how Sue wishes there were no pigeons in public spaces at all. Surprising, I know. And if you do have the video element to this podcast, check out the screen at the start, as we're going to see Buzz, the baby blackbird, being hand-fed by Sue. However, let's jump into the show. Let's talk all things pigeon, the king, why a fuss wasn't kicked up about it unlike other PETA campaigns, and so much more. But before we dive into this conversation, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to you, our listeners, for your unwavering support and dedication. Your passion fuels our mission to advocate for a more compassionate world, one episode at a time. So if you enjoyed today's discussion, please consider sharing it with your friends, leaving a review or rating on your preferred platform. Your feedback helps me reach more people and spread the message of compassion far and wide. Let's dive in.
I've got a bird. Sorry, bouncing around in the background now. This is... Sorry. Hang on, let me see if I can let her out and then she might be happier. I've just fed you, my darling. Sorry, Callum. No, you've just been fed. Do you want to meet her? This is Buzz Lightyear. Not a pigeon.
I was about to say, is that a pigeon? That's really cute.
It's really cute. She is probably about 6-week-old female blackbird. That got brought in, and I was like, "Oh, we don't really take blackbirds anymore." I used to. And they're like, "Oh, there's no one else." So she look at that.
Pretty chilled out.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah. Hi, good morning, Buzz. Hi, baby. Don't poo in my tea, thanks. So there you go. You can have me.
You're drinking tea and not Ribena.
Not Ribena. Not Ribena out of a wine glass. Oh God, I think I was mad. I think last time you spoke to me, I don't even know when it was. It wasn't that long ago.
No, I think it was at least 2 months ago.
Yeah, I think it must have been 2 months ago. And we hadn't spoke properly for ages. So I was all overexcited because I was catching up with you. And then it was like, I was insane in that interview. Absolutely insane. And it was the evening, wasn't it? It was quite, I think you were up early and I was up late. Whereas it's the other way around now. So I'm a bit calmer in the morning. It's fine.
Yeah, what is it now? Like 5:30 in the morning now?
It is, 5:20, yeah.
Yeah, this is the kind of time I was up doing podcasts anyway with the Americans.
Yeah,
was this time?
Yeah. So now so it's fine. Are you going to go somewhere else, little one? Are you going to sit down for me? Why don't you sit on there? Because I can't really hold you up like that the whole. No, probably not. No. This is what's happening now. Right, let me put some newspaper under your bum then, because you're not pooping all over my table. And then I can put brain on. There you go. Happy? We're happy. We're all good.
It's a 2-guest interview now. I love it.
Yeah. Sue and Buzz. Let me find a stick. Is this stick shitty? Right, go on the stick at least, so I can prop you up. There you go. Nice. Okay, good. I tell you. Right, will you sit there? She just likes to watch the screen. So our friends Claire and G, I've made some fantastic vegan friends, and they didn't know where they live. Neither lived round here, obviously. I'm going sea swimming with them and all sorts, and but didn't really know where they lived. And they turns out they live 5 minutes down the road in the next little village in Plump. But they've been looking after this little one for us as well, and they've just absolutely why are we doing this? And they've absolutely fallen in love with her. So they've called her Buzz, haven't they? No, apparently it's a hand or nothing. She wants to see the screen. Anyway, but the point is they have a TV, whereas I don't. And she was watching TV in their house. So now she's seen the screen. She's like, ooh. Yeah. Nice little thing. She's lovely.
Yeah, I think for anybody that is listening to this at the moment, if you go and check your screen on Spotify, you should see that there's a bird staring at you.
Yeah. Two birds, one with more feathers than the other. Why are you eating food? John, that's it. She's sat in her food now. Okay, we're going to be all right.
Yeah, but I realised that obviously the people listening have no idea what we're on about. So it's literally, if you look at your screen, guys, I think it's only on Spotify. If you look at your screens, there is a
Spotify. There you go. Yeah.
Staring into the screen. You don't really
but back in the day, I'd always got a baby bird on the go. It's just been the last year, really, that
I knew what a baby pigeon looked like.
Yeah, they're so cute.
Yeah, they kind of they're a bit odd to look at. Like, they're a bit cute, but they're also a bit strange to look at. Oh.
Yeah, they're like me. It's strange to look at. Yeah, I think it's just stop sitting in your food. I think it's just she's determined. So she's eating Noochie Poochie and she loves it, but now she wants to sit in it. They well, I can't feed you when I'm trying to get to your food, aren't I? And you sat in it. Pigeons are weird. I mean, I love them obviously, but they are weird to look at when they're little because and you're right, people don't realise what they look like when they're little because they come out the nest basically as mini adults. Whereas these guys come out the nest looking, I mean, okay, she looks like a mini adult now, but she hasn't got a long tail and she's still very much like when you look up close to her, she's still very much got in a food bowl. She's very much got a baby face. Whereas a pigeon, they look completely different because they haven't got a sear, so their beaks look too long and they're not quite right. They've still got these little wiry feathers everywhere. And,
yeah, they look like Boris Johnson.
Oh, how dare you, sir?
Yeah, like the hair, they have Boris Johnson hair.
They're doing, yeah, okay, I kind of see where you're going with that, sort of. But, I'm also a little bit disgusted that you've mentioned Bojo's name in relation to a pigeon. I think we just need to stop this interview right now. No, yeah, they do look weird. They do look weird. I know I've got pigeon food on it, brilliant, bird food. They do look weird. And it's because pigeon parents are just amazing. They feed them right until they're almost an adult pigeon, basically. They just keep feeding them. Whereas these little guys get kicked out the nest and get fed on the ground. Pigeons just keep getting fed in the nest until they're virtually ready to leave. And they're really good parents. Not like your parents who were rubbish. But it wasn't their fault that you got thrown out of the nest, is it? So she ended up coming out the nest, allegedly. Obviously, we don't know because we didn't speak to the people that found her because she was from the local veterinary practice. It was them that phoned us. And apparently she was catted out of a nest. She was brought in by a cat. So, and now you live in a Tupperware dish. I don't know what she wants to see. I've given her like a really nice stick and you can't put that in your mouth, sweetie. So there you go. You're just mesmerised by the bird, aren't you? You can see, just like...
I am, and it's really cute. You don't really see many tiny birds about. However, knowing you, I've actually seen baby birds, but like apart from what they're watching, like a National Geographic, I don't really see them on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's a bit like National. Well, this is why I got the nickname Drunk Snow White, isn't it? Because there are always birds on my head and flying around.
I think the first time I ever met you, which was on a networking meeting,
a
bird flew into the screen.
I remember that because there was a lady from somewhere on the meeting with us, and she just went. David screenshotted it. Is that he took a screenshot, and it's me going, and this bird, like, where's the camera, like that at the camera, and then on the other side there was this woman going. Because the bird was going to fly through and get her. It was absolutely horrible. And it was smaller than this. It was a tiny little bird, and I just couldn't catch her. She was just flying around the office. I was like, it's all fine. It's fine. Everything. But yeah. Was that the first time? That was years ago. Then. Oh,
I don't think it was the first time, but I think it's the first time we actually properly spoke.
Oh, the first time with bird craziness. Yeah. Yeah, this is it. Right, I think you're ready to go back. You've had some food now, aren't you? There you are. Right, I think we'll be all right for a bit now. She's just active because it's the morning and the sun's up, and she's like, "Woo, it's food time." So the hand smells a bit foody now. Never mind, we'll be all right. I've got a sensible glass this time.
You've got a sensible glass this time. You have a cup of tea.
I've got water. Because I decided. Also, I've just done that and then realised my nails are filthy, so don't judge me. I've been repainting the window of the shop, and I've got paint on my nails. Disgusting woman. It's not bird muck. Oh, couldn't. I'm still caffeine free. All these years later, I'd be a mess. Can you imagine? I'd just be running around.
Yeah, like you're hyperactive about the coffee. Like if anything else, if you imagine if you were doing like anything stronger.
No. Yeah, decaf tea strong enough. That's fine. Oh my gosh. I listened back to our, knowing that we were doing this, I listened back to our last chat that we did, which was just a car crash. And I was like, but I was quite surprised because my recollection of it was that just basically I said loads of inappropriate sweary things, which doesn't sound like me at all. And it was awful. But actually I think it was okay. And we did talk about the sanctuary moving, and we talked about what happened and that kind of thing. And yeah, I couldn't remember when we recorded that actually, but you're right. I think it was a couple of months ago. And I remember sort of saying on it, "Oh, I'm just exhausted. I'm done. Like I've had enough now." And since then, I mean, things haven't changed that much, but it does feel like we're really coming out the other side of it a little bit now. And it was really nice actually to listen to that and be like, "Oh, I sounded so pissed off." And actually, I don't really feel like that so much now. So it's quite nice, isn't it, to sort of hear that back and think, "Oh, that was only a couple of months ago." And
a quick turnaround time and a new haircut.
Yeah, different haircut. Yeah, that's because I can't afford to actually get my hair cut. So now I've had to cut my own fringe in, which I don't know if I'm loving the fringe, if I'm honest. But yeah, because it's just messy. But it's because I'm starting to go grey now, so I've got grey coming through, and I'm trying to grow it out with me. Yeah, I had yellow hair last time we did this, and Matt keeps saying to me, "You're too old for yellow hair." I'm like, "Brilliant, thanks."
Ouch.
Yeah.
You know what? Go do yellow hair. Go pink.
I've done pink. No, I'm happy like this now. This is fine. But I'm happy for my grey to come through, and I like it. But it's just, yeah, it's at that awkward stage. Why are we talking about hair? Yeah.
To be fair, I don't think I expected you back so soon, because I feel like this is probably going to come out 5 episodes after your.
Oh really?
Episode. There's a few episodes in between. However,
yeah, but not that bloody.
A lot has happened since the last time we spoke.
Yeah, it has. A lot has happened since last time we spoke. Again, yeah.
Yeah.
It has. Yeah.
So you're back quite soon compared to some other people that are back or are coming back for a second round. But because apparently in the world of pigeons, a lot goes on.
It's all going. It's all going on. Controversy as usual.
Yeah. I think last time we spoke about sanctuary, we spoke about pigeons. However, there's so much controversy around pigeons, and I think we should probably dive into that, because I think I only found out maybe 2 months ago why there's so many pigeons around us constantly. I kind of found out the backstory, and then when we were speaking over voice note the other day, you obviously mentioned the backstory of pigeons as well.
Yeah.
Any of them.
Yeah.
And because obviously sometimes you hear things online and you're like, "Oh, is that true?" And then obviously you just kind of verify that it is true. So what is the background of pigeons?
Well, so about 10,000 years ago, humans realised that if we took a rock dove, which is a native bird, to I don't know which country in the world. You know, my geography's appalling. There was the original like jungle fowl, if you like, and we sort of mishmashed them like we always do with animals, and created what you kind of basically know now as a modern day feral pigeon. They haven't really changed apparently that much, because we realised that actually they were pretty easy to breed. and we can eat them. So they were basically the old-fashioned chicken before modern day chickens came around. That's what we were eating. So we were eating their eggs and we were eating them as meat because they're really quite easy to breed, because they pair up for life, and they'll just produce egg after egg after egg. So they'll produce 2 eggs per brood, and they'll produce about 6 broods a year if you let them, which is why we don't like ours breed as well, which is why we swap our eggs out. Otherwise we have millions of pigeons by now. And the meat that people tend to eat is squab, which is baby pigeon. I don't know what age they eat them, but I'm guessing it's like 5 or 6 weeks old. Apparently that's when the meat's tender. So so people and they still do. It's not even a delicacy. It's still like a meat that's eaten in a lot of places, and in Britain. I don't know about Oz, but yeah, they eat pigeon still occasionally. But in America, they still eat quite a lot of squab apparently, and they're king pigeons, so they're slightly bigger, a bit like we've done with chickens. We've basically bred different varieties, and they've now got these really quite big white pigeons called king pigeons, and that's what they breed for meat. So that's how it all started. So of course they are completely domestic. They are domestic animals. They're not wild. And then they kind of fell out of favour with us, and we decided that actually there are other meats that we could eat instead, like chicken, and we just abandoned them basically. We just sort of went, well, we don't want these anymore, but they're all already millions and millions and millions and millions of them, and we just stopped feeding them and abandoned them. But they're domestic, so it's the same as breeding a puppy or a batch of puppies and just letting them out in the street and going, oh yeah, you can survive out there now. Look, it's like, but unlike puppies, pigeons can survive because they're absolutely incredible birds. So they've just learned to eat our scraps, eat our rubbish, basically. In the same way that rats eat our rubbish, and that's why they get that reputation for being dirty and they get vilified, is because they are clearing. But they're clearing up after us. They're clearing up after people. There would be so much rubbish on the ground, like food waste, if it wasn't for rats and pigeons. But they get the rats for being dirty, not the pigeons. So that's not us. So that's where pigeons come from. But also, they come from the racing industry. So again, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, we realised that we can use them as messengers. And we can use them to take messages back and forwards, but we can also bet on them and send them out for races, which is a whole other thing that we can talk about. But it's a blood sport. It's really, really cruel. And of course, all of this is exploitation, isn't it? So, but that's how they've ended up on the streets. So a lot of the birds that we find are ex-racers, and they may have been integrated into a flock for years, and then they get injured and they come into us, or they may come down in their first race, and that's why they end up on the streets. Because there's no natural food or water for them, and they are pets. Basically, they're domestic, so they get sent out on these huge races. They don't know how to get they know how to get back sometimes, but they get blown off course, or they're starving. So they come down, they see a flock, they come down, and then they just stay there for a couple of days. And the lucky ones are the ones that don't go back, basically, because if they're a couple of days late and then they go back. Not all pigeon races are like this, but the majority that I've come across, which you always do because we've got a legal obligation, the birds don't belong to us. We phone the owners because of the ring on the leg, and they'll say, oh, we don't want them back. They're worthless now because they haven't won the race. Very occasionally, an owner will come and collect, and then obviously it's the worry of what they're actually going to do to that bird. So I'll only release them if I'm really, really happy that they genuinely love the birds. So yeah, that's why there are so many pigeons on the streets. They shouldn't be there. They shouldn't be there.
Which is really bizarre, because obviously, I've grown up thinking, just pigeons. They're just naturally everywhere. I didn't realise there was a whole backstory to the fact that we had them for so long, found them then slightly pointless by the end, and was just like, you know what? There you go, to the street, and then they've kind of. I'm guessing they trust us still very much. So.
Yeah.
Like London, they trust to go near you enough to get food off. I don't know if that's because
it's a little bit of trust, but it's mostly just that there is no other food. There's no natural food source for it. So and I can only talk about the UK, as we proved earlier when we were talking about where places are. And my geography is shit. I've never left the UK. I've never had a passport, and my life experience is just the UK. But so I can only talk about that. But in the UK. There are only three types of pigeon. So there's a wood pigeon, which are the big, like, they're the ones that sing, "They're my shoes, Betty. They're my shoes, Betty." That's a wood pigeon. Great big girl. She's amazing. Quite clumsy because they're really big birds. They sit on your fence. They fall off when they're shagging. They're really clumsy big birds, but they're amazing. They're really clumsy birds, and they'll be the ones that are fighting. They're going to be in the UK. They're going to actually be other than if you're lucky enough to get a bird of prey in your garden, they are going to be the biggest bird that you get in your garden, unless you get seagulls, obviously, because seagulls are whoppers. But for garden birds, the wood pigeon is going to be the biggest bird in your garden. They're beautiful birds. They've got big bands of purple and green and a big white collar. They're absolutely, and huge grey birds. They are gorgeous. There is loads of natural food, and they are our native pigeon. They eat different types of grasses and clovers and seeds and legumes. They'll eat insects if they need to. They're absolutely incredible. So that's wood pigeons. The other type of pigeon, which there are squillions of around here, is Eurasian collared doves, which are adorable, and they're these tiny sort of beigey, peachy little guys like this with a black band around their necks, and they love the sound of their own voice. So they will go up on a chimney and sort of go down the chimney and go, woo, woo, down your chimney. I've got friends who've got rescue collared doves, and they will walk round looking for something to stick their heads in, like a glass or a cup. And if they can find something, they'll stick their head in and go, woo, just because they love the sound. I love collared doves. And they look really cute and really tiny and almost like Disney kind of caricature, and they are so aggressive. They're so aggressive. They will fight like to the death with other collared doves. They're quite territorial, and when we have them in, they hate being in captivity. They're proper wild, and they're really aggressive. So those are the two kind of properly wild pigeons. All the rest of the pigeons in the UK are domestic. They shouldn't be here. So if I woke up tomorrow, if I went out there now and there were no pigeons, I would be, no feral pigeons. I'd be so happy. And I think it's assumed, I think, we've kind of had this conversation before about veganism, where people assume that vegans want to wake up and see millions of cows in a field and millions of... No, we don't want to see any of them. We don't want them to exist because they're being bred by us. And it's kind of... So it's slightly different to that with feral pigeons now, because it's been thousands of years that they have been domesticated and then left. They are now breeding on their own, of course, which is why there are so many. But their numbers are being added to on a daily basis by show birds that get lost or are abandoned, show pigeons, fancy pigeons, or by these racers that come down in racing, in races and then end up in the flock looking for food, because going back to what we were saying, there's no natural food. So there's natural food for Eurasian collared doves, there's natural food in the wild for wood pigeons, but there isn't for ferals. They eat a slightly different diet. They don't really want to eat insects. They're seed eaters, and they don't know where to get their food from. So that's why there are so many, and that's why it's abhorrent, really, the way that they're treated. It's dreadful.
Yeah, but you kind of go to somewhere like, let's say, like Leicester Square in London, or like Piccadilly Circus, and there is thousands upon thousands upon thousands there all over the place. And everybody is just feeding them like seed. You can then buy bags of seed to feed the pigeons.
Yeah.
A
friend of mine called Emma up in the Wirral, she's on holiday, and I can't remember where she's on holiday now, but she did tell me. Is it like Denmark or somewhere? Somewhere beautiful, like loads of incredible architecture, and basically all of the holiday pictures on Instagram at the moment is this beautiful architecture, but when you zoom in, it's pigeons. Obviously, because she's a rehab and she's a brilliant rehabilitator. Brilliant, she's got a fantastic flock going on. She does loads of really, really good work. Anyway, but yeah, she's in a country at the moment where she said in this one city square, they reckon there's about 85,000 pigeons just in this one place. And the photograph she sent, it's just a sea of grey. And different colours, but we can talk about why there's different colours in a minute. But yeah, just an absolute, all you can see is just all these pigeons. I was just like, oh, it's amazing. And she said they've taken the view that, well, the pigeons are here, we can make a tourist thing out of it. So they encourage tourists to buy food and feed the pigeons. So then there's more, because like any natural wild animal, if there's more food, you're going to have more breeding. Whereas, because animals aren't stupid. If there's no food, they're going to stop breeding. They're not like stupid humans that just breed regardless of whether they can afford food or not. They just, they are intelligent animals, unlike humans. So they'll sort of go, well, there's not really enough food, we'll stop breeding. So they are breeding and breeding, but they're also they take a bit more responsibility out there, that if they can, they'll swap the eggs out for plastic eggs, and that's what we need to do here. The only way we're going to... So the reason why they're vilified, the fact that we've got them here, and the reason why people go, oh, dirty pigeons, is that because there's no proper nutrition for a pigeon, they're eating our waste. They're eating our scraps. They're eating our bits of pastries off the ground, bits of food that's inappropriate for them. They have nowhere to live because we've abandoned them. So they're living on the top of buildings, or they're living on window ledges. So a pigeon can't poo when it's flying because the legs go backwards. They're not like seagulls and crows and different birds. They can only poo when they're standing. So they will stand up, walk to the end of a building, reverse, and poo over the edge of the building because they don't want to poo in their own nests. They're really clean, and they do this like really cute little shuffle, like, and then they go forward again. They're like, I've had a poo now. Everything's great, and they're really clean little birds. But the reason they get a reputation for being dirty is their poo's gross because they're not on the right diet, and because they poo off the end of a building, of course the poo sticks to the building. Now, normally in our flock, the majority of the poo that we have is almost kind of dry and nuggety because they're on a really good diet. They're on the right food, so their poop is normal. It's quite dry and it's how it should be. But in the wild, in our towns and cities, they're not in the right food, so the poo's disgusting. It's absolutely gross, full of parasites because obviously nobody can worm them, and just absolutely, they get diarrhea quite a lot. They carry, sort of all sorts of bacteria will sit on that poo. It's absolutely foul. So then people moan about them, but rather than doing something about it, so by saying, right, okay, do you know what we need to do? As people, we've created this problem. We need to take responsibility. So we need to take all these birds out to the nearest rural area. If they built a great big concrete tower, which sounds gross, but bear with me. If you could build a huge concrete tower that a person could get a ladder up the inside, basically, and the pigeons could all nest on lots of different layers of ledges, you could then go in once a week and take all the eggs away, replace them with fake eggs, and you would stop them breeding, or you at least the amount of breeding would be less. I don't think you're ever going to completely stop, because I mean, even we have the odd accident with eggs. You do miss them. They're quite clever at hiding their eggs, but the flock numbers just wouldn't keep growing and growing and growing. There would be far less, but you could feed them appropriate food out there, which means that the place would be cleaner, and then you'd take that problem away from the towns and cities. But that costs a lot. The problem is, because people are then still breeding pigeons for racing and for showbirds, those pigeons find their way to the people and go, oh, people, they've got food. They land in the towns and the cities, and the cycle starts again because there's food on the ground and there's water around. So, we need to do both, and you're never, ever going to do it. So as much as I would love to say, I'm going to push the council to get all the pigeons outside of, say, Carmarthen or outside of Aberera, and let's push to have a tower outside, and get someone, we'll get a group of volunteers to feed them out there, and we'll get them away from the shops where it's costing shop owners money because their buildings are damaged and they're going under people's solar panels and they're damaging those. But it's never going to happen, because even if with the greatest will in the world you did all of that and you got people involved and money and you could do all of that, unless you can stop the source, which is pigeon racing, there are always going to be new pigeons, and we're talking about thousands a week in the UK that are bred. And there's too much pigeon racing to stop it.
I feel like surely, like with the cleaning costs and all the costs from like damages and stuff like that, obviously I feel like it'd be something as a top priority to kind of create something like that, because obviously the one-time expenditure would at least stop a large population of pigeons breeding.
Yeah.
So you think that'd be a top priority? Yeah, it's going to cost some money and you're never going to stop it, but at least you'll stop the majority of it. So why is it one of those things that is just kind of,
Because the people that would have to shell out the money to make that work are different to the people that are racing the birds for money. So there was a pigeon in China about 3 months ago that sold £1.2 million for one pigeon.
That much? That's an insane amount for a pigeon.
Yeah, it's because we exploit them so much. We exploit we can talk about pigeon racing if you like, which is horrendous, but that's the reason, is because people bet money on them. It's the same as horse racing, and I feel like we're making little gains maybe in horse racing, but realistically we're never going to stop it because there's too much money involved, and it's exactly the same. And I think certainly in this country people think that pigeon racing is like an old man's sport. That's the comment that I get all the time, is, oh, pigeon racing is an old man's sport. It's like, no, it's not. Funny enough, yesterday, I haven't had a chance to read this yet, somebody sent me an article that was in The Guardian about it yesterday, saying like, oh, the new breed of pigeon racers, and it was all these kids racing pigeons, and it's just like, oh guys, come on, why? We're so much better than this. Why are we doing this? So while that is still being done, we're never going to stop it.
I feel like that can't be a fun sport to watch, but you see them take off. What are you doing in that time? Like it's not like if you were to watch like a sport like football, rugby, you're watching it the whole entire time. You're letting the pigeon go, and it might not come back.
No,
it's not exciting.
I'm laughing because I've never actually thought about that bit. Where there's just some woman stood there going, I wonder when they're coming back.
That's literally it.
What do they do? I feel like I need to ask that question now. Next time I come across a pigeon race, instead of having a go at them, I might be like, look, what you do is abhorrent, and we want to talk about this. But can I just ask you, what do you do in those 4 hours when you're waiting for?
Yeah, like what's the excitement about? Like I can understand like the horse racing and the dog racing because people are watching that go round.
Okay.
Like, but however, like with pigeons, like if that flies away, that like you're not. What are you watching? You're watching the air.
Oh God! So in a so in a in a local race. So let's say I had a flock of pigeons here, and I was going to let them out to race. In local races, it's not always for money. Sometimes it is just for the love of the bird. I still don't agree with it, but that's why they do it. So in a local race, I might literally put 3 of my birds in my car and drive for an hour down the road. That would be fairly local. By the time I've got home, the pigeons are probably already home.
That's wild.
They are that fast. So they can fly at about 90 miles an hour.
That's some speed. Like,
yeah, they're going to get home before you, basically. So yeah, there's no time to Netflix and chill or do anything like that. They are literally they're literally going to be home before you in a local race. So like, yeah, there's no time to even cook your potatoes. They are just going to be home before you. So they wear little banded rings with like a magnet on, and that clocks the time that they come in, so they know who's won the race. So that's how that works. In a longer race, the reason that they would be away for days, so then it was just a case of, again, waiting for the tags to go off when they come home. So with the longer pigeon racing, what they do, are you ready for this? Because this is horrendous. This is what they actually do. It's called widowing. So pigeons breed for life. They mate for life, technically. Some of them don't. Some of them do have lots of different partners because they're little slags, but the majority of them mate for life, right? So Freddie and Wilma mate for life, and then they're all really happy, and they're properly in love. Pigeons are like properly in love. They kiss and they transfer pigeon milk, which is basically vomit, into each other's mouths, because that's what they do, and it's delicious. And they have a little snog, and then they have a little mate, and then they'll produce 2 eggs. And so what the pigeon racers do is, the humans involved, is they will either wait until they've been sat on the eggs for quite a while, or they will wait until those eggs are hatching, and they will take away one of the birds, whichever's the best racer, and they will put them in a box with other birds, and they will drive that bird, I don't know, 300 miles away, maybe over the seas, to Belgium or to France or somewhere like that. And then they will release that bird 3 days later. So that bird has been in a box. They haven't been able to move. They have no food, no water. If it's warm, they're in a warm box for 3 days on a lorry, because they're going with these big races. You're talking about thousands of birds in a huge HGV lorry, basically a massive lorry. They get taken away, and then they get let out. The time that they leave is logged. They let all the birds out. Now that bird is going to fly home, and this is why it's called widowing, because the only thing that bird can think about the whole time it's in that box and the whole time it's flying home, the only thing that bird is thinking about is getting home to their partner and their babies. That's it.
That's fucked.
Yeah, it is fucked. It's absolutely horrendous. So what we're doing, we're exploiting the fact that they can fly, but what we're actually doing is exploiting their mental health. We're exploiting the fact they love their partners so much, because they absolutely that's all they can think about is getting home. It's horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous.
When you take them that far away, let's say you take them to Belgium, how, like, I'm guessing they have quite a good navigation system to work their way back. Yeah,
we don't know how they do it. We still don't know. And there is a little bit of quite gentle research being done to work out how that is, but we don't know. They're incredible. But what we do know is that nowadays they follow, there's this test where they put cameras on them. And they don't take them thousands of miles, because we're trying to be kind to these birds when we're learning about them, because it's generally people who really love them. So they put these little trackers on and these cameras on, and they watch where they're going, like a GoPro thing, and they watch where they're going. So obviously, a couple of 100 years ago, they would have just flown straight across fields, and we don't know whether it's a magnetic thing or what, but they can get back home. But what they've found that they do now is they follow the roads. So they tend to drive along like the M6 if they're going that way, and then they'll turn off when they come to a traffic island. They'll be like, "Oh right, I've got to turn right here." So they're probably doing more miles than they need to, because they're following. They're amazing. We don't know why. Absolutely, we don't know why they do it. They are incredible birds. They're absolutely incredible. So yeah, take away the exploitation. They're absolutely amazing. So the other part of it, why it's so cruel as well, is pigeons generally walk for their food. They don't need to naturally fly for their food. So if we go back to talking about Eurasian collared doves and wood pigeons and the original jungle fowl that turn into the feral birds, they don't fly hundreds of miles for food. That's not in their nature. They're fairly territorial. Not that a feral pigeon will fight for territory as such, but they will stick in their own groups. So as an example of that, the flock in Aberaeron, which is where I am, and there's a flock in Aberystwyth, which is 45 minutes up the road, because that's how far away towns are here, because I live in Wales and everything's miles away. Those two flocks will never integrate. You will not get a bird from Aberaeron will not go, oh, do you know what? I fancy going on holiday. I'm going to fuck off to Aberystwyth and just fly. They won't do it because they've got food where they are, their friends are where they are, their girlfriends are where they are. Then they don't need to fly away. So they will fly for maybe 10 minutes a day. The rest of the time they're walking around, which is why we love them, because they're sort of always walking around like this. They're walking around looking for food. They don't naturally fly for that long. So that's the other reason why these races are just so barbaric, because you're asking a bird that has got incredible flight muscles. Don't get me wrong, the muscles here on a pigeon are absolutely incredible, but they don't need to fly that long, and they don't naturally fly for that long. So you're taking a bird hundreds of miles away and getting it to fly back just for your own gain, for money and for the prestige of having a winning bird. And so you're exploiting them like twofold, really. You're exploiting the nature that they want to come home to the family, and you're exploiting the fact that they can fly because they don't need to fly and they don't fly for food. So of course they would, if there was no food, like a wood pigeon, of course, will fly to a field if it wants to, she wants to get some food from a crop or something, then of course she will. But you're talking about 10 minutes of flight, not 9-10 hours, which is what we ask them to races. It's horrendous.
Like, to be fair, it is incredible that they have these kind of like navigation systems. And
they're amazing.
As well as like, obviously, but it's not just birds that have these as well. Like there's quite a few animals that I've come across recently. Turtles as well. They will go to like one side of the planet and then go back to their breeding spot where they were born and know exactly where they were born. And I'm like, how is this all happening? And people assume, like, obviously with turtles, people are like, oh, that's cute, they're so smart. But people see pigeons and are like, oh, that's a dumb bird.
Yeah, they think they're really. Yeah, they do. They think they're dirty and thick, and it's like actually they're probably more intelligent than you are. Like proportion to their brain size and the way they live. Yeah. Pigeons are one of the only birds that can self-recognise. So if you give them a mirror, they will know they're looking at themselves in the mirror. They'll know it's not another bird, and there aren't any other birds that can do that. They're incredible. Yeah, it is absolutely mental. It's great. I mean, like, and a bit like, I think crows might, I don't know if they've tested that on crows. Crows might be able to do it, corvids as well. Because corvids can recognise faces, for sure. If you, not that you would, I don't mean you, but if a person were to injure or scare a corvid, they will come for you, like, years later.
That's the same with the Australian magpie here as well. So there's
I love the videos of that.
Swooping season is the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. Like, so. I'm
so sorry, I just want to really. Because like, can't really hurt you.
I didn't realise swooping season was a thing. Plus, they don't really do it for anything other than a bit of fun sometimes as well.
They're sadistic birds.
Yeah, because like I was just I was walking along a road in Queensland, and all of a sudden this thing came towards me, and I was like, I need to duck because there's this giant bird coming towards me.
Big birds, aren't they? Out there, yeah.
Like, unlike the English magpie, those Australian things are wildly huge. I was like, I ducked. I was like, okay, maybe it's just a one-off. But sometimes birds take off and obviously, kind of go near your head. And then I turned around and it's coming back towards me. I was like, what have I done? What have I done? And so I ran and towards the nearest place that I could find, which was a laundromat. And I was like, I'm going to hide out in here. And this guy, I walked in and he saw me and he was like, what's wrong? And I was like, oh, there's like a bird like trying to attack me. It's like, fuck me. It's not even swooping season yet. And I was like, that's when I was like, I didn't know this was a thing. And the first time I heard it was from like the most robust looking, big, muscular Australian guy being like, oh, it's not even swooping season. Yeah, this is. And that's when he then explained to me what swooping season was. So like, I don't know what you're saying to me.
Terrifying, yeah.
This in my head, I thought he was lying to me. I was like, this can't be a thing.
Yes.
Through that. Apparently, over here, everything wants to kill you.
Oh, God. It does look terrifying.
Yeah. I was like, this is the most bizarre thing that's happened. Like, I just thought that the thing had a vengeance for me. I was like, I don't know what I've done. Like, because I know they recognise people.
He's English. Let's get him.
Yeah. That's the thing. I knew they recognise people, some birds, and I was like, have I done something to piss this one off, or has it kind of mistaken my identity for someone else? I have no idea. But at the moment, at that time, I just looked like an average backpacker, you know, long hair, backpack. I was like, there's quite a lot of us.
Yeah, the birds are like sunburn. He's not native.
So how do you obviously, like, as you said, like the pigeons won't integrate with other pigeons, but obviously you have a sanctuary full of pigeons. Like,
they won't integrate with another flock, is what I mean. Sorry. So within their own flock, they're quite happy, but there was no reason for them to just suddenly get up and think, I'm going to go and join another flock because it looks better. They'll just stay with their own flock. So there's just they're not particularly territorial as such, but there's no reason for them to get up and go and join another flock. So that means that what's incredible about that is that each flock in towns and cities are all completely different. So you're going to get coloured variation in each flock, you know, genetically, of course, from all the different birds that, all right, little ones, you want some more food, from all the little ones that that join. So you might find that basically the flock in, say, the town where slightly different over there, but the flock in your town is going to look physically and colour-wise is going to look different to the flock that's half an hour up the road, just because of genetics. And it just depends on how many white pigeons have been released in the area, for example, or how many ferals there are, or how many racers have integrated with that flock, or whether you've had any fantails that have found their way to your flock. Each flock's going to look slightly different, to the stage where you could probably take photographs of a flock in, say, 10 different towns, and you would absolutely see they're all completely different colours and have different variation. Like some might have fantails and some might have peaks on their heads, because there are loads of different types of, as with all animals, we've exploited them for the way they look, just like dog breeds. So we've bred hundreds and hundreds of different types of pigeon for the way they look, and those are showbirds. We've got quite a few ex-showbirds in our flock, like Indian fantails, and we've got some other sorts, and I do not know all the different types. I don't, because it doesn't interest me. You know, to me, they're all deserving of love, and it doesn't matter what they look like. So I don't actually know the name, but there are lots of different types. And some of them, it's a little bit like the French bulldog thing. Like, I think they're called German little owls. What are they called? German little owls, something like that. But they're basically a type of pigeon where we've bred them so selectively to look cute that their beaks are so small that they can't feed their own children.
Oh, that's horrible.
What is that about? Yeah, it's insane. And some of them struggle to feed themselves as well, because they can't pick the seed up properly because their beaks are so small. So they should have normally, you know, this size beak, and we've just bred selectively so that they look cute. Or you get pouters, which are like a type of pigeon that's got a big crop up here, and their heads are so far pushed back like that again, they struggle to have natural behaviour. And what really pisses me off about this is the RSPCA will not get involved. Like, oh no, that's fine. You know, it's breeding pigeons. It's fine. It's like, it's not fine. This bird can't groom itself. This bird can't exhibit natural behaviour. How is that fine? It's absolutely not fine. But that doesn't break any laws. It isn't causing a problem. So they just get.
I feel like the RSPCA have a lot of issues as well, because they're not the nicest of companies.
No, not at all. Don't get me started on the RSPCA.
Yeah, I think it's one of those companies that people assume do really good for animals. However, you get RSPCA approved chicken, you get RSPCA approved like beef. They're going into, like, you know, factory farms, and that bird's so cute again. They're going into factory farms and stuff like that, and being like, yeah, this is absolutely fine.
Yeah, it's horrendous, and this is it. It's like, there's been quite a bit of backlash on social media, hasn't there, about I don't know if you have seen the latest RSPCA advert that came out, and they've basically AI'd animals singing to, you know, is it Aretha Franklin? I can't say her name. Aretha Franklin, the Respect song. Do you know the one?
Oh yeah.
That one. So they've got animals singing along to that. You know, they've given them sort of humanised mouths, which is a bit freaky. And the animals on the adverts are cats and dogs, but then also you've got chickens singing, just give a little bit of respect. And it's like, right. And then obviously it's the RSPCA saying that we respect all animals. It's like, well, no, you don't actually. Because if you did, you'd stop all this breeding. You'd just stop it all. So you can't. You don't respect them. When the RSPCA inspector came down to inspect our sanctuary, He's a great guy, and we didn't know which inspector we'd end up with, and we ended up with this guy called Keith, who's great, and he's the chief inspector of wildlife for Wales. So we ended up with like the big guy, and we were like, oh my days. And he was actually really helpful for us. He was fantastic. He came in, he spoke to us about what we were doing. He was really pleased with our sanctuary. He was really pleased with the way we kept the birds and everything. He disagreed with the fact that we have disabled birds, and in his opinion, he thinks that if a bird can fly, then it should be out flying. And I sort of said to him, but these are domestic birds, a lot of these. And he was like, yeah, but they should still be able to fly. And I said, but if we let them out, these birds have been bred specifically for showing. They cannot fly properly. If I were to let this bird out, she wouldn't be able to fly. She would end up on the ground and she'd be predated by a cat, or probably even a dog, because she wouldn't be able to fly away, or another bird, a bird of prey. She'd be predated. And he was kind of, well, I don't want to put words into his mouth specifically, but the RSPCA stance on that basically is like, oh, but birds should fly. It's one of the 5 freedoms. They should fly. It's like, yes, they should fly. So don't come at me for keeping them in a huge aviary. Come at the people who bred that bird in the first place. So they can't fly. But they don't. They're so blinkered. But obviously the problem with our sanctuary is we have domestic birds like that, but we also have wild birds. And they're all mixed in together because ultimately they're all pigeons and they're all happy to be together. So their issue with us having wild pigeons, as it were, from towns and cities that need rehabilitation is that they absolutely should be out flying because they are wild birds. But it's the same thing again. A lot of the ones that come to us are disabled, or they were babies that were brought to us, a little bit like I know she's not a pigeon, but like this little one, she's come in as a baby. She can have a poo, a baby blackbird. She's been brought in as, I'm feeding her. She's got used to me, of course, but we will start letting her out in the garden. She will go under a bush. We'll feed her for a week or two, every few hours in a bush. And then she will learn to eat insects. She'll just naturally do it. She will naturally learn to live out there. And eventually she won't come to us for food anymore. I've done this thousands and thousands and thousands of times over the last 15 years. I've never had a baby bird that I've hand reared become so tame that I haven't been able to let them out naturally. I mean, okay, there's a caveat there. If you look at your corvids, they can very much become humanized, if you like, but as a general rule, even with them, if you're very careful with the way you're doing it, you can let them out in the garden. They are truly wild. With a pigeon, if you get a baby pigeon in, it's totally different. You can't necessarily just release them out unless you're releasing them somewhere where there's another flock that they can integrate with, and there's a food source. Because if I were to do the same with a baby pigeon as I was to this blackbird and let them out in the garden, there's no food for them. So they just wander around and try and get back in through the back door because they're domestic birds. So they just don't have the same natural urge to go and to fly off like she will have. She won't want to know me in about 2 weeks. There's no way she'd sit on my hand like this in a couple of weeks. Even if I've got food, she'd be like, no, I'm not interested, because she can find her own food. But a pigeon won't do that. A pigeon will always come back and be like, oh, you're my mummy, because they're domestic birds. Sounds like, of course he does. He's an intelligent man and he knows what he's doing. But when we talk to him about that, there's still that caveat of him saying, oh, well, yes, but they should be able to fly free, so you should just not really have a sanctuary. They should either be put to sleep or released. That's the stance from the RSPCA. Well, we trump that because we've got a vet. Obviously, we've got a vet that signs, all our birds are ringed and each one is checked, and our veterinary surgeon, trumps him, basically. And that's the only reason that the RSPCA allow sanctuaries, is because if your vet signs a form that says this bird must be kept in captivity because he or she will not survive in the wild, there's nothing they can do. And that's the only way you can do it. And there was quite a big surprise, I was involved in a scandal last year because I'd had some birds from another rehabber. Where are you going? Little bird's flying away. I had a bird from a rehabilitator, and about 4 weeks after I had those birds from her, she was a lovely woman. She got a great rehab place in her house, and about 4 weeks after that happened, she had it wasn't an arranged, it was a surprise visit from the RSPCA. Sorry, I'm just putting the bird back in a cage. She had a call from the RSPCA. They called round, and because she hadn't got any paperwork from a veterinary surgeon, they put a lot of her disabled wood pigeons to sleep. They took them away and put them to sleep, which is incredibly sad. I had a lot of sympathy for her, because what she was actually doing was really trying to help these birds that had been brought into her. Unfortunately, it's just a lack of education, a lack of sort of knowledge on her part. She didn't realise that she needed to have paperwork in place, and that was really unfortunate. Had she got that paperwork in place, they couldn't have done that. So I'm sort of trying to work within the pigeon community as well, within the rehabbing community, to explain to them what they need to do. myself and an amazing basically the Pigeon Queen, Jenny Mason, who runs Safe Haven Wildlife up in the Wirral. We're writing a series of books at the moment about pigeon care and all wild bird care. I'm doing that at the moment with her, and that's part of the thing that we're talking about. Really, is look, just if you're a rehabber, make sure your paperwork's in place, because the RSPCA will, pardon the pun, swoop in and shit all over the place, basically, if your paperwork, because they'll go to a chicken farm down the road and be like 10,000 birds in a tiny shed with no ventilation. Oh, that's fine. And they're domestic birds, really, aren't they? But then they'll come to us and say, domestic birds in a massive aviary, having everything they need and got friends. No. It's just, you couldn't, absolutely crazy, isn't it? Just, what is wrong with you people? So, yeah, RSPCA, they're a necessity. We have to have them. And yes, in some respects, they do an amazing job to stop animal abuse. But then they also applaud animal abuse with their red tractor scheme, don't they? So,
exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like every time I speak to you, you're involved in some sort of scandal at some point. And this time is no different. You have 3 new pigeons in your sanctuary.
It was a very exciting scandal.
This is probably the most exciting scandal. It's more exciting than the Daily Mail one.
What?
This one
more exciting than Walrus Face. That scandal. It's got a face like a walrus. Yeah. It was exciting for me because being asked to help, like it's not every day that PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, phoned us. It's not every day that PETA phone and go, hello, Tidy Sanctuary, could you help us? And I'm like, yes, because I love what they do. I love the work that they do all over the globe. I mean, they do incredible work. They phoned us in December or January and said, we're working on something and we wondered if we could ask for your help. I was like, of course. And the lady who the campaign manager she's absolutely incredible. I had to sort of answer a lot of questions about ethics. I was actually really pleased at how much they looked into me and my sanctuary and my personal vegan ethics before they allowed me to be on board, which was just fantastic. And as it should be, so they heard about the sanctuary, but the first phone call, it was really odd because she was like, I can't tell you what this is about, but I need to ask you loads of personal questions about your veganism and your ethics in your sanctuary. And I was like, okay, this is a bit odd. But she was like, but so you can just say no, you can tell me to clear off. And I was like, well, no, of course, happy to help. If it's about pigeons and whatever, happy to help PETA. So that was really nice to know. It wasn't just that they went, oh, that's a sanctuary that got pigeons in. They sort of, so I took it as a real compliment. And then that was, they were like, we might need you to have some pigeons for us, but we need to know, do you breed them? Do you do this? Do you do that? How does it work? So she was obviously happy with everything. And then about a month later, didn't hear anything. About a month later, she just phoned and said, right, we've got 3 birds that we need you to have. We will pay for them. That we know financial outlay to your sanctuary. Are you happy for that to happen? I was like, yes, absolutely. It was all like really cloak and dagger. I was like, what's going on? And then another month later, she phoned and said, right, the birds are coming to you on this day. And now I can let you know where they're from. And they're from King Charles's flock in Sandringham. And I was like, what? They're from what? So what we're trying to do is, King Charles is the patron of the Pigeon Racing Association in Great Britain, and PETA are asking him to question that and step away from it, because they feel that by having such a high profile figure, it's endorsing it. I mean, he does literally endorse it, doesn't he? And he has his own flock in Sandringham, which are bought and sold for money. Don't know where the money goes. Whether I don't know enough about the monarchy as to what happens from a money and a tax point of view. I imagine it's fairly dodge. But basically he has his own group of people down there that breed pigeons. Now, he didn't start that. It's historic. The pigeons were brought, I think, from India, where pigeons are really held to high standard. I mean, they're still abused, but in India, apparently, they absolutely love their racing pigeons. And there are a lot of, that's why you get Indian fantails and Pakistani high flyers, and there are hundreds and hundreds of breeds that are specific to India. And they're amazing birds, a lot of them. But anyway, and a lot of those type are bred over here for racing as well, including with the King's flock. So they were gifted apparently to the Queen, so quite a long time ago. And then he obviously took over the flock. So they're not his flock, but nevertheless, he has become the patron of the Pigeon Racing Association. And what PETA and I want to do is ask him to move away from that. So there was a quite a wealthy donator to PETA who offered to take those 3 of the pigeons in an auction that were being sold, because the auction at the time was for charity. It wasn't for the Pigeon Racing Association. Money didn't go back to him. It went to charity. They paid, and then the 3 birds came to us. So it's just trying to highlight really what the plight of these 3 birds would have been. PETA named them Cliff, Dover and Vera after Vera Lynn, because she was against pigeon racing because of what she saw, like how they were exploited during the war. And yeah, we've got 3 racers living with us now, and they're having a great time, and they'll never have to race. They'll never have to look for food. They'll never be taken away from their partners. They've all got partners already. They came to us I think it was the end of February, they came to us. And I think unfortunate timing, and all credit to PETA for doing this. We were going to make a massive stink about it. And then, of course, unfortunately, King Charles has got cancer. And literally the week that they were going to go national with it, he announced he got cancer. So I think poor timing, I don't mean poor timing on his part, like bloody hell, King. But yeah, poor timing in that we haven't been able to do the massive campaign that we'd like to do, really, just out of respect for the fact that ultimately he's a human and he's got cancer. But I'm not quite as nice as PETA, and I'm a little bit like, right, you might have cancer, but you're well enough to have a flock of pigeons and pay someone to look after them. You're well enough to write back to us and come away from, take your responsibility. These animals are still being exploited, whether you've got cancer or not. So, I know that's a bit harsh, but I'm a harsh person. And I just think take some responsibility for your actions. So, yeah, I'm still sort of plugging away. But we did get quite good response from it. And the main thing it's done is because we've used someone high profile to show what happens with pigeon racing. I personally, as well as I'm sure PETA have in their offices as well, have had loads of inquiries about, well, why is this bad? And it's led to, I know you've sort of had me on your podcast before, thank you so much. But it's led to other interviews as well and other podcasts, just because people are like, well, hang on a minute, we didn't know that about pigeon racing. Why is it bad? And that's the joy of, having a pigeon from a high profile figure like him. And for me, really, it's just another 3 birds that won't be exploited, and every bird matters. So, yeah. But yes, again, lots of scandal, because then I've been slagged off by all the pigeon racers. So I'm now hated by thousands more people.
Yeah, because I tried looking it up, and there isn't a huge amount about it online, because obviously with the circumstances that happened, nothing really got reported on. However, everything that I found, nothing mentions where the pigeons went. They're just being brought by PETA. Yeah. But I feel like then it leading back to you as well with another scandal, you'll probably get a lot more hate as the walrus faced lady.
Yeah, like that stuff. Yeah, and I think it's because it is just because of what happened with the kid, just because he was taken so poorly, and and obviously they weren't really releasing much about his health, were they? So it was just deemed, rightly so, really. I mean, we're not horrible people, are we? It was just deemed a little bit inappropriate to really go for him at a time when he was asking for privacy and he got cancer. So ultimately, he's a human being, isn't he? So it's only fair. So yeah, it did fall a little bit flat, that campaign, in my opinion. But I also feel like, right, he's out in the public eye now, so we're sort of trying to sort of elevate that a little bit more now, and we're going out. So there was like a Radio 2 interview, and a few different things. And I know, just from our point of view, I don't know about from PETA's point of view, but from our point of view, we've had a lot of people get in touch because of it and just say, right, explain to me why pigeon racing is bad. So that's great. So for me, it's been a really good success.
Which is really nice, because I think people are very unaware. I think the pigeon racing still happens. People still think it's like a old school kind of like. Yeah, I know like some people still do it, but I didn't realize it's such a big thing still. I thought it was like a dying sport, but clearly not. But with him having obviously a loft full of pigeons, or a pigeon loft, and obviously you have 3 of them. I'm assuming there's more. There's probably more there.
That he has?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he'll have hundreds of them. Yeah, it's a massive loft. If you look online...
He's just not keeping 3 and he doesn't have them anymore.
No, it's not like we've nicked them all. No, not at all. No, and I don't even think they were his most expensive birds. I think it was just that there were 3 that he put up for a charity auction. No, I mean, he's got hundreds. He will make money from that. He'll make money because their line, the genetic line in his loft apparently is really, really good. And I mean... to look at these birds, they're beautiful little birds. They don't look any different to any of the rest of the pigeons in our flock. They just look like racing pigeons. You know, they don't know they're any different, and they're not really any different. But yeah, he's got a good line of racing pigeons, and so they're worth quite a lot of money. So yeah, no, it's still carrying on. But that was it. It was really just. I mean, ultimately, we've rescued three pigeons from him, but ultimately it was a publicity stunt, wasn't it? Just to use somebody like that. Just to try and get the name. It was just unfortunately bad timing, but I feel now that we can go out on that a little bit more, because he's back in public work again now, so I think we can go for him a little bit now, which is my plan. Especially with, like I said at the start, there's that Guardian interview came out yesterday, and they're talking about this new breed of pigeon fanciers, basically. So I need to read that and see if I can get him a little bit involved with that, because we all need to speak out for them. The way they're just abused, basically. It's horrendous. Absolutely horrendous.
Well, I'm guessing the other pigeons, when these three came to you, couldn't tell that they were royal upper class pigeons.
They didn't care. They all just got dumped in with the rest. They're like, oh, yeah.
So how many pigeons do you now have in the sanctuary? Because I remember last time when I came to you when you were in Staffordshire, you had a lot of pigeons.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many there was there, but I'm assuming there's probably more since then.
No, actually, there's still less than there are in Staffordshire, and that's because there's two reasons for that. When we moved, because I had to leave the land, some of the pigeons were rehomed, some of the wood pigeons, because it wouldn't have been appropriate for those birds to do that long journey, because they were sitting in a box for 6 hours, and some of them just wouldn't have coped. It wouldn't have been fair, in my opinion. So some of them were rehomed. Then we had that storm last year that damaged a lot of our aviaries, and we've had to move 3 times. We've had to move from Staffordshire to Penabont to the other field, and then the other field to where we are now. So all of the aviaries and all of the birds have moved 3 times in 18 months, which is a lot. I mean, the birds don't care. They just kind of get in a box, and then they come out of the box and like, oh, it looks the same as the room before, and they're quite happy. But there's 2 reasons why we are now full, even though we haven't got, in my opinion, as many birds as we used to have. So full capacity for us now is 200, and that is purely down to the size of the pigeon aviaries that we've got at the moment, and that is because of a lack of funding. I cannot take on any more birds at the moment. We're completely full. So yeah, 200 is where we said, right, that it would be unfair to have any more birds than that. And that's, as I say, unfortunately, that it's purely a financial thing. We couldn't really afford to feed and medicate and have veterinary care for more than that at the moment, with everything that's happened, because some of the aviaries got damaged in that storm last year. We have rebuilt, but it's not perfect, and it doesn't look as nice there as it used to do in Staffordshire, which, as I said, the birds have got everything they need. They've got their enrichment, they've got everything they need, but I just feel that it would be inappropriate to take on any more birds at the moment while everything's a little bit still in flux. We just need to concentrate on the birds that I have got, those birds that I made a promise to years ago, and the birds that have come since that I promised to look after. They can live for 15 years. So, these are not like blackbirds that live maybe 2 or 3 years. These are birds that live for a long time.
I had no idea how long pigeons live for. You just assume there's, I don't know, you see the ones in the streets with half a leg missing, and you're kind of like, oh, that's probably going to die soon. But you can still live for another 10 years. Yeah. I do actually feel bad when I see those as well. But you see a variety of pigeons in the streets with the most gammy looking legs and faces and stuff like that. I don't know if that's down to obviously the environment, or maybe, I don't know if inbreeding in pigeons is a thing. I'm assuming it might be.
It's purely down to what we were saying earlier. They walk for their food. They don't really fly. So in the wild, they would be flying from tree to tree and getting food. But again, these are domestic birds. They're not native birds. They're not natural, really. They're jungle fowl or rock doves. So they would normally. So, for example, there are some that live in Tenby, which is in South Wales. So that's quite a long way from here. But if you go down to Tenby, and we did drive down there specifically to see them, there are some living in the rocks. And that's what these birds, thousands of years ago, this is what they were. They were rock doves. So these birds live in the rock, and they go out and get the food, and they go back and nest in the rock. So they would fly to get the food, but then when they get there, their food's on the ground, so they walk around. So the flight is to the rock and back, but the walking around that they're doing, that's what they're doing in the towns and cities. But of course, the difference is in the wild, they would have been walking around on lots of different sort of, soils and grasses and those kind of things, and some pebbles and whatever. But where they live now in towns and cities, they're walking on concrete or they're walking on paving slabs, and it's no good for their feet. But also they're walking in our scut. They're walking in all the manky, horrible hair, human hair. They're walking in all the rotting food, and this all gets attached to their feet. And they are very, very clean. They're actually really fastidious cleaners, pigeons, but there's only so much cleaning they can do to save the bottoms of their feet. So they're walking around in all of this. They walk through chemicals. They get hair, they get bits of cotton off our clothes and bits of human hair wrapped around their feet, and it amputates their toes. It can amputate their feet because it works as a tourniquet basically around their legs, around their feet. And if a rehabber can't catch them to take that hair off and treat their feet, and we've got, I think, 10 of our birds have either got one. Well, we haven't got any one-legged. We did have a one-legged bird, but she was quite old and she died unfortunately last year. But we've got a few that have got really badly injured legs from past injuries, or they've got toes missing, or their toes are bent backwards, or they've just got really, really bad old injuries to their feet. It's the most common problem with them, just because they're walking around in our scut basically, and they shouldn't be. They get really injured feet.
And I assume that's probably why people think they're like disease ridden as well, because they see something with like an ugly amputated foot and they're like, oh,
disease,
like scabies or kind of like something like that.
The whole thing about pigeons being dirty absolutely grinds my gears. It pisses me off more than anything. I have worked with birds for 15 years and I've worked in veterinary practice since the 90s. I've never caught a disease off a pigeon. In fact, the only animal I've ever been ill from, it was a crow. It was a corvid. It was a crow that had got Campylobacter. And Campylobacter is a bacterium that tends to sit on meat. So this crow had come to me with Campylobacter, and I was really poorly. But to be fair, the reason I was really poorly was because it was during lockdown. And they basically were like, she's shitting everywhere, shot her in a side room, and just ignored me for about a week until I threw my own poo at a doctor because they wouldn't test it. That's a whole other story. Oh god, I wouldn't normally throw poo at medical staff. They do an amazing job, but no one was listening to me, so I was like, I've got Campylobacter, just test it, because I knew it was Campylobacter because the crow had got Campylobacter. I was like, look, I know why I'm here, I know what this is. So I knew that crow was poorly, and I knew I contracted that from that crow. But so you're talking about, I'm just coming up to 50, right? And I've been working with animals and messing about with animals since I was a kid. I've never caught anything else. And I've been working so closely with pigeons for the last 10 years, and I've never caught anything from them. They're not dirty birds. They're really clean birds. So what they're walking around is, in fact, only yesterday I had this massive argument with somebody on Instagram about this. And he was going, oh, they're filthy birds. And it was on a vegan post. And they see my name when I'm on there saying things. They see my name and oh, you can't wade in on this. Pigeons are dirty. They're disgusting birds. And I'm like, right. So I would never eat a pigeon, is what he said. I'll eat meat, but I would never eat a pigeon because they're filthy birds, because they walk around in their own poo. So I said, well, actually, they don't walk around in their own poo. They walk around in your rubbish that you've dropped on the floor. They're looking for food. They're not walking around in their own poo. And he said, they are. I've seen them. I'm like, well, no, they're not, because they roost up high. And yes, of course. But of course, they're domestic birds. They are going to get feces around them. Of course they are, because we've stopped looking after them. And he said, I only eat wood pigeons because they don't scut around in their own poo. And I was like, well, that's because they live in trees. But their nests will be held together with poo. All birds do that. That's just a thing that birds do. But what I actually said to him then is, what about, do you eat cow? Do you eat pig? Because they scut around in their own shit as well, like cows. On most farms are walking around in massive amounts of shit daily. Not the cow's fault, obviously, and they shouldn't be there. But the hypocrisy, particularly of meat eaters, the hypocrisy saying pigeons are dirty when they're actually so clean. Ours will line up, especially on a sunny day like this. When I get there this morning, I'm going to go up to them in a bit. When I get there to give them fresh water in their baths, they line up when they see the hose because they know they're getting fresh water, and they will argue with each other, like properly fight with each other to be the first one in the water to have a bath. They love it. They're like, if you go on our TikTok or on Insta, there's so many videos of them just like having a bath. They love it. They absolutely love it. They're really clean birds.
Yeah, I think I saw a video the other day that you I think it was you that shared it. Well, it was pigeon content, so I always assume when I say a pigeon content, it is you. Which was what's it called, like pigeons rolling around in like dust and like water and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
They live.
just kind of as you'd see a dog roll around in like dirt and water and things like that, which kind of just shows that they do have these like extraordinary personalities. Obviously, people think, oh, that's a bird that can't really be much going on in there.
Yeah. We're talking about personality. Romeo and Stripe. Romeo and Stripe came to us last year. They are two ex-showbirds that were surrendered to us. They are Indian fantails. They're quite big birds. Comparative to a feral pigeon, they are quite big, and they can be quite aggressive actually. But these two are particularly sweet little birds. In our sanctuary, they have the choice. At this time of year, they can sit outside if they want to, or they can sit inside a shed. And when they're laying eggs, when they're coupled up, which most of ours are, they want to make a nest. And some of them make beautiful nests, absolutely. And that's a whole other conversation about they make shit nests and they're crap parents. They're not. They make beautiful nests. If they've got the right tools, they make the most amazing nests. They make incredible nests. Anyway, but these two have just, rather than sitting in a bedroom pod, which they can do, or sitting in a shed, they are sitting on the floor. Like, why? So I've put some straw down where they've decided to nest on the floor. But Romeo, the male bird, is so in love. So Stripe's sitting on the eggs, plastic eggs, obviously, because I swapped the real eggs out. I gave them some dandelions. Now, most of the birds, they'll eat dandelion leaves. They love them. They like lettuce and different things like that, and spinach and kale. But this one day I'd given them dandelion, but I'd also given them the dandelion flowers, which we don't always do because the bees need the flowers. But some of the flowers just happened to have got picked at the same time because I was just, there were thousands at the sanctuary. I mean, there are so many dandelions. So I was just sort of grabbing big bunches of them. Romeo takes the flower bit, the actual flower bit of the dandelion, and decorates the nest with them. He's just adorable. Yeah. Now, there aren't many in our sanctuary that do that. He's the main one that does it. And there's an incredible video. It's gone really viral on TikTok. And that's him. He's going out and he's selecting which flower he wants. And then you see him walk in to his wife. He gives it to his wife, who is a bit like this. Oh, another flower. She gives no shits. She's so ungrateful. And then he lifts his wings up like this and does a little dance. He's like, what? Did it? And he's so happy with himself. And he does that every time. Every single time he gets so excited by giving a gift to his wife. They absolutely have their own little, life going on. If you just like any animal, if you just take time to look at the behaviour of that animal and try not to humanise it too much, think what is that animal actually doing? Him and his wife are just having a great time. They're just decorating the nest. He's put little flowers. I used to have, they've both since passed now, bless them, because they were quite old birds. But I used to have Rebel Whopper and his wife. He used to do the same thing. He would get bits of straw or bits of grass. He'd go out and get them because we give them access to all sorts of different materials, natural materials, and he would take them and put them around her neck, almost like a decoration. And she would sit there, and he would just put more and more stuff on her neck and her head. And it's a token of love. That's the only reason he's doing it. I don't think he's trying to go for fashion, fashion design. He's doing it because he loves her. He's taking her a gift. And she would just sit there on the eggs like, oh, this is great. It's beautiful. They're such romantic little birds.
Oh, I love that.
Especially the males. But then also, the personality. We've got another two, and I did a video of these two the other day. Oh, God, these two. There's two birds, and they're always loved up. They're always on the sheds. But he is so aggressive to her. If she goes down for some food, she goes down, and he's like, I need your attention. And he just pecks at her like, come on, and he'll chase her around, and she's like, woo! And in the end, she will fly up to where they've nested on top of one of the sheds. So she'll fly up onto there, and all he wants is to get underneath her head so they can have a cuddle. That's all he wants. He just sits there all day going, God, starts pecking her. He's like, come on, we need to have a snog. And that's all they want to do all day. It's proper little sitcom. But that's it. But all people see is dirty pigeons, and they're so much, they're not dirty, but also they are so much more than just these little funny, things waddling around. They've got their own lives and their own little, hierarchy within the flock, and they're busy little guys.
Yeah, I'm guessing you don't really see that unless you do take a look back and just kind of step back and just look into it as an observer and be like, hey, these actually, it's the same when you find farmers that have given up breeding cows, and they're like, cows have personalities and things like that, and as well as sheep and many other things. It's when these people take a step back and are like, I don't know why I'm doing this anymore, because there are these huge personalities within within the fields, and like the same as you would like your dog. You get needy dogs, you get like,
yeah, absolutely. But it's no different. It's no, if you've got a pack of dogs, you're going to see the behaviour within that pack. Like, they've all got their own individual personalities, and the pigeons are the same. And actually, one of the most common questions I get is, how can you tell them apart? They all look the same. Well, first of all, they don't all look the same. Okay, some have got injuries, some of them have only got one wing. So there are very distinct physical differences, and some of them are a certain type of breed or a different colour. So, okay. But even if you take all of that aside, there are a lot of them that do look very similar. The blue bars or the diamondbacks, they do look really similar. But actually, I know most of them because of their personality, or because of the partner that they're with, or the fact that they go back to their own bedroom every day. So sometimes I'll look at, say one of them's a little bit lame, and I'll think, oh, why is she hopping? Like, what's wrong with her leg? And I'll think, oh dear, right. And then I might look and think, okay, I'm not quite sure which bird that is, because there's 15 diamondbacks in one area, for example. So I'll be like, right, okay then. So all I have to do is wait to see which bedroom she goes back to, and then I know which bird it is, because I know where she lives and who she lives with, and because they've got their own little houses in there. When I clean them out, I'm really careful to make sure that I disturb them as little as possible. So obviously I do pick out the poo, and because they're on really high quality food, their poo, generally speaking, is really dry, like little nuggety bits. So I don't need to like scoop out the whole bed. If it's poopy on stuff, then of course I will, but disinfect it. But generally, every week the clean is just a case of picking out the poo, because their nests are beautiful. You don't want to disrupt the nests. They're gorgeous. And we pick out the poo because they like to go back to their own bedroom. And if you disrupt their nest, they hate being cleaned out. So they're like, ooh. And it's not that they hate being cleaned out because they're dirty. They hate being cleaned out because they've taken so much pride in their little bedroom, in their own little house, in their little nest, that they don't want me sticking my great big gammy pink fingers in and messing it up. That's why they're pissed off. It's not because they're dirty and they don't want to be clean. It's because they don't want me to mess with their beds.
Yeah, I feel like that's the same with any kind of person as well. You don't want just a randomer coming in like messing up your room.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same. It's like almost the same sort of cognitive distance that you have with pigs. Pigs are a brilliant example of exactly the same thing. Pigs are dirty. That's the rhetoric that goes around, isn't it? Pigs are dirty. They lie in their own shit. If you actually look after pigs, they make nests. If you give them the right equipment, they will make a nest. So I work with a sanctuary around here that they've only got 2 rescue pigs. But I also know, obviously, footprints and quite a few, and pigs in the woods, quite a few sanctuaries that have hundreds of rescue pigs. They are given, they don't have their nest, their bedrooms made for them. The sanctuary that I'm talking about, that I've got personal experience with here, they give them a bale of hay when they'll clean out the pigsty every now and again. And the pigs don't like it when you do that, but you have to, for hygiene, you have to every now and again. But generally speaking, they'll give them fresh hay, because what the pigs will do, they will go in each however many times a week they do it, and they will push all their shit out of the pigsty themselves, because they don't want to lie in it. So all Maria has to do is pick up the shit that the pigs have moved and give them fresh hay, but she doesn't take the hay in there or the straw in there. She leaves it outside, and the pigs spend all day coming out, getting the hay and straw and taking it back in and making their own bed. That's part of their life. That's what they do. They're really clean animals. But again, pigs get told that they're dirty, and they're not.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that I think, especially with pigs, when it comes to pigs, people try to dehumanize them as such.
Yeah.
So they don't feel so bad about, obviously, the slaughter and the killing. They're like, they're not really worth anything. However, we do know
absolutely.
Dogs,
yeah.
So.
Yeah. If we can ignore the fact that they've got a personality, and if we can ignore the fact that they've got little social hierarchies and they love each other, then it's easier to kill them, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same. Obviously, that is not a subject I know an awful lot about, but it's the same mentality as human war, isn't it? It's the same thing. If we can dehumanize the enemy, then we can kill them. And it's exactly the same with the food industry. If we can make them seem like alien species, like, they're just a product, then we can eat them without having any guilt.
Just wild.
Yeah, it's just, I think that's, I did an interview with them on Radio Lumini the other week, and it was a lovely interview, and she got a lot of questions, and one of the conversations that we had was about how the sacrifice that sanctuary, she sort of said, thank you for your sacrifice, because, we've talked about this before, and I do feel like I've sacrificed a lot, but actually, coming as a sanctuary owner, of course you do. But I actually think as a vegan, sorry, Callum, I'm just going to have to draw this curtain because the sun is so in my face. I'm trying to feed this bird and I can't see what I'm doing. Very weird. Sorry about this. It's beautiful to have the sun, but I can't see. Right, there you go. So I'm trying to do this and feed a bird. Sorry. So, but what I said to her was, I don't necessarily think that a sanctuary owner makes any. You might make a sacrifice financially or a sacrifice with your time, and but a lot of vegans make those sacrifices when they go to when they go out to a slaughterhouse and do a vigil, or when they stand on the street and talk to other people about veganism and about why we need to stop this horrendous thing that we're doing. And I actually think a lot of vegans make a sacrifice in their life with their mental health and with their friendships, because when we go vegan and we realise what people are doing, we don't want to spend time with those people, particularly within your family. I think is probably one of the hardest ones, isn't it? Because you kind of dumped in with those people, and the people that you love and the people that you care for, suddenly you realise what they're doing and they can't see. And it doesn't matter how much you say to them, can't you see what you're doing is wrong? Why can't you see it from my point of view? Why am I the only one that sees their pain and their suffering? And I don't know how you feel about this, and I can only speak for myself, obviously, but I absolutely have fallen out of love with people because of that. I don't just mean, I mean with friends, I don't just mean with partners. But I mean, like, you can get the ick with someone, right, over a small thing, but over a thing like that, how can you truly love somebody if they happily pay for other animals, non-human animals, to be abused? For me, can't do it.
The people that are very unaware, I understand, but the people that are aware of it and then do it still, I'm like, that's the people that are unaware, and there's a lot of people that are blissfully unaware because they've never kind of they don't know what's going on. Those people
because that was what we were.
Yeah.
I was one of the worst in a way. I'm a massive hypocrite because when I first started working in veterinary practice, I worked in large animal practice. I was a vegetarian from the age of 8 because I was like, we shouldn't use animals, we shouldn't do this. I was only a vegetarian, I wasn't vegan, I was vegetarian, and I was happily going out to farms and performing surgery on cattle and dairy and beef and sheep, and being like, oh yeah, well, we've helped that cow now. It's bonkers. It's absolutely, but what was I doing? What was I thinking? Why did I think that was okay? No, okay. Of course I thought it was okay because in my head there was a justification of like, that cow's really lame, we need to help her not be lame. Of course, you're helping an individual animal, so that's how you justify it in your head. But how do you justify that industry? To the point now where I could never work in veterinary practice again. Like if I needed, let's just say the CIC that I run, the community interest company, to fund this sanctuary, let's just say it stops earning money and I have to go and get a job to fund the sanctuary. I couldn't, even with all my years of experience and qualifications, I couldn't go back and even work, say, in reception in veterinary practice. I couldn't do it because I find the whole industry abhorrent. The whole pet care, forget large animal, the small, we shouldn't have pets. We shouldn't be, it is exploitation. And from an environmental point of view, it's a disaster. And I just don't think we should be doing it. And I piss a lot of people off when I say we shouldn't have pets. And I've got 2 rescue dogs, and I've had rescue dogs and rescue animals all my life. And of course, if a dog gets brought in, at the sanctuary at the moment that I share with Herd on the Hill, there are 18 feral cats there, 18 that have been dumped. But we're not just going to put them all to sleep, because it's not their fault that they've, that somebody's allowed cats to breed basically in a farm up the road, and have then gone, oh, they're vegans, they'll look after them, and just thrown the cats over the fence. That's not the cat's fault. So we're not going to euthanize cats because that's not going to happen. But should we be breeding cats in the first place? No, and I don't think we should. So you can imagine. Not just have I pissed off people with my opinion on veganism, but now I started saying that in my friendship group. Now I've got loads of people that are just like, we're not talking to her, she's a dick. There's nothing wrong with having a dog. Like, we love dogs in this country. It's like, yeah, you love dogs, you do love dogs, but you love dogs for what they bring to you and what they do for you. If we genuinely love dogs, we wouldn't be breeding brachiocephalic dogs that can't breathe or have got horrible ears, and you wouldn't be chopping the tails off. You wouldn't be doing all these horrific things to them to make them look the way you want to look. That's not love. That's exploitation.
Yeah, but you do get a lot of the, obviously, chopping the ears and certain like ways to kind of get like the exact ear they want. And obviously French bulldogs and pugs over time pugs a few hundred years ago had long snouts, and they just got shorter and shorter and shorter over time. And I feel that people breed them really for beauty purposes more than anything else.
Yeah, it's all aesthetic. So I've got personal experience of this, as you know, and this is a bit of an odd one for me, and I cannot quite get my head around what we need to change. So my ex-husband was profoundly deaf and had a hearing dog called, who you've met, Vectra. And he's a sweetheart. He's a black Labrador. Absolutely useless is his job. He wasn't very good at his job, bless him. But I mean, but hearing dogs for the deaf do amazing work. Dogs are happy. They're living in a home with people. But those dogs also, and this might sound controversial, but those dogs are given to people who are deaf, who have no experience of having a dog. They're not pets. And the hearing dogs for the deaf absolutely don't encourage you to treat them like pets. They are a working dog. So that dog is being bred specifically to help that person navigate the world as a deaf person. Now, navigating the world and I know this is a whole other subject, but navigating the world as a deaf person, in the experience that I've had living with a deaf person for 6 years, is incredibly difficult. I was so didn't know any of this before I met Ian, really. Have no idea how difficult it is to be profoundly deaf. Or even deafened, like incredibly difficult to navigate the normal world, as it were, for hearing people, the hearing world. That dog made such a difference. It's his second hearing dog, made such a difference to Ian's life. But the difference is Ian was in quite a privileged position where he could almost treat those dogs a little bit like pets because he'd had dogs before. He understood dogs to a point. We had other pet dogs, which you're not meant to do when you've got a hearing dog or a guide dog for the blind. You're not meant to have any other pet dogs. But because we got together and I got dogs and he got his retired hearing dog, there were 4 dogs in our house. So Vectra had a lovely life. But a lot of those dogs, they don't have bad lives, but they're not treated as pets. They're not treated in the same way. And also, when those dogs retired, they're taken away from that person and just given to someone else. So they are treated as commodities. That's exactly what they are. And they're worth a lot of money. We had it drummed into us by hearing dogs. This dog is worth £45,000. That's the amount of training that's gone into this dog. They're an incredible charity. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not slagging them off. They do incredible work and they really change people's lives. They absolutely do. That isn't what's in question in my mind. What's in question in my mind is it right that we use an animal to do that? We are using that animal. There's no way of getting around that. And is that right? Now, is there another way you could no, there isn't another way of doing it. Those dogs are the eyes and the ears to a hearing and seeing world for those disabled people. And, you don't want another person attached to you doing that. Even if it is your wife or your husband or your son or your daughter, you want the independence that having a disability dog gives you. But it does bring up a bigger ethical question of, well, why should we rely on those dogs? But to me, at least, and this is again hypocritical, and we can be hypocritical as vegans, and that's because that's how we learn. To me, I would rather see a Labrador being bred selectively to be a good hearing dog than a pug being bred for the aesthetic of its face. But actually, there's not really any difference. Other than their health, other than a Labrador, we know they've got a long snout. We know that they are healthier than a pug because a pug just shouldn't be alive. It's not, So there's absolutely that. But the moral of that, it's kind of a similar thing. So it's really hard. It's going to be a really hard one to negotiate. But I do think that probably not our generation, but certainly maybe my son's generation, they're in their 20s, and maybe their kids' generations, these are questions that they're going to have to, these are things they're going to have to negotiate, because we can't just keep breeding and breeding and breeding from an economical point of view and an environmental point of view. We can't sustain the pet food industry. Even if we go to fake meat for pets, or, the new type of food that's coming out now for carnivorous pets, even with that, it's not sustainable. Like, why are we sustaining billions of animals? We can't do it. The planet won't do it. So yeah, they are going to have some tough questions. I'm so grateful that I'm a child of the 80s and I didn't have to give a shit about it. I'm so lucky. I do feel so lucky that I had that childhood, because childhood now for kids is really hard. It's really hard. God, yeah. But don't breed pugs. Don't breed bloody French bulldogs.
Yeah,
we had the last.
I do feel bad for pugs and French bulldogs.
What's that? Sorry.
I do feel bad for the pugs and French bulldogs. I see them breathing, and I'm just like, that shouldn't be a thing.
I was just going to say, we had a surgeon, and I won't bang on about this much after this, I promise. But we had a surgeon at the last practice I worked at. A big hospital was the last practice I worked at. And I was a surgical liaison. That was my job. So I used to liaise between the client and the surgical team. And we had a surgeon there, and she was an incredible surgeon. Her only job was BOAS surgery. And that is surgery to allow dogs to breathe properly. That was her whole job. And there were that many breeders would bring in these dogs that they had bred that couldn't breathe for BOAS surgery. It's a type of surgery on the palate of the dog, just to allow that dog to be able to breathe for its short life. That was the whole surgery. And how insane is that?
It's wild the amount we will do to give something a life that really shouldn't, as much as it's bad, shouldn't have that life. No. It shouldn't be there in the first place.
No. So, you know, we were helping those dogs. I'm happy with my part in that. We were doing that because those dogs couldn't breathe. But why, as a nation, are we allowing those dogs to be bred in the first place? And why aren't the RSPCA doing something about it? Because they're not. Fucking RSPCA!
So I am going to wrap this up in a second.
We've been talking for hours.
We're nearly on 2 hours.
I've got a lot of opinions.
However, I think next time we probably speak, there'll be another scandal at some point. Because, I feel like it's a twice yearly thing that seems to happen to you.
Something will have, the shit will have hit the fan in one way or another by the time we speak.
And I feel, will you be now that obviously the King's pigeons are in your sanctuary? Yeah. Is there going to be more work with PETA in the future?
I don't know. I'd like to think so, but yeah, I don't know. I genuinely don't know, but I'd like to think so. But yeah, who knows? They were great people to work with. I have a lot of time for Kate and all the people that I dealt with. They're fantastic people. So, and I just think worldwide they're doing amazing things. I mean, look what Jamie Logan's doing, just absolutely incredible work out there with the podcasts and you know, and going out and talking to people on the street and just absolutely bringing humour to it. You know, that's what we need, isn't it, as well? Humour to it, really subject. So yeah.
She actually came on a few weeks ago. By the time this will come out, her episode already would have been out quite a few weeks. But yeah, we did speak about PETA in that time, and the great work they're doing. But obviously, they have such a bad rap half the time.
I never understand. That's for a whole other podcast.
They get a bad rap for something that they don't do. However, you know, you're just never going to win with an animal rights agency, I guess. No. Or organisation. You're never.
Yeah, PETA are like the pigeons of the pigeons of the animal rights world, aren't they? Exactly. They get vilified for something they are not doing.
Yeah, they're doing something good for the world, but still getting vilified for it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's wild. But no, she was an absolutely great person to speak to as well.
She's brilliant.
When it comes to like animals and PETA and
yeah, I love her. She's fantastic.
But where can we find you? I know last time we said where can we find you, and if no one has listened to the prior episode, which feel free and listen to it. Then where can we find you? Where can we help?
You can find me all over social. These days I can be mostly found on TikTok actually, because I'm down with the kids, Callum. So I do an awful lot of TikTok lives now. Which is great because it's bringing money in for the sanctuary, which is fabulous. And they're really nice kids over there on TikTok. Found me on Pigeon Talk. So Little Green Pigeon, it's just at Little Green Pigeon. We're on Threads, but I don't do a lot on there. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and I'm on TikTok. And our website is littlegreenpigeon.co.uk. And our shop, I've got a beautiful shop. It's gorgeous. I love my shop. I'm going to go open that in a bit. And that is in Aberaeron, which is in West Wales. So basically, come and have a holiday in West Wales because it is the most beautiful part of the UK. It is beautiful. And it's back in time and it's amazing. And come and see my shop because it's awesome. You can donate directly to our bank. You can donate through the website. It doesn't matter how you donate. We get the same amount of money either way. Or you can come in the shop, have a cup of tea and talk about pigeons and probably meet a tiny little bird.
And if you can't find your way to any of those websites, you will see Sue in a newspaper near you.
Probably. Yeah. There's a horrendous picture of me with a pigeon on my head going, local woman says this. Yeah, probably. Thank you so much, Callum.
That's really, no worries at all. I always enjoy you coming on, and I assume in about 3 months more, we'll have you on for a third time.
Right. Note to self, make more scandal.